I gather.
It's just landing right now, Tom, on the south lawn of the White House. And we think in just about, probably 25 minutes or so from now, the president will be speaking to us from the White House briefing room. You might wonder why the president would speak on such an important occasion from the White House press room or briefing room rather than the Oval Office. I don't know the reason. I would guess that on a night like this, with so much confidential information being passed on to the president, that he doesn't want a lot of television crews mucking up his office and getting in the way. That's what I'd do if I were the commander-in-chief.
Well, he also likes the more informal setting. Yes, John. He also likes the more informal setting, does he not? That he does not like to compete with the images of Ronald Reagan, who was without peer when it came to making those addresses from the nation and the majesty of the Oval Office. This president has always been more comfortable in an active setting, and certainly he'll have that in the White House press briefing room.
That's right. That's absolutely right, Tom. We've only had one nighttime press conference in the White House during the Bush administration. Now we have Mrs. Bush coming back. They were supposed to come back tomorrow afternoon. I suspect that when the president left for Camp David yesterday, though, he knew he might well be coming back early. And Jim Baker behind the president, the Secretary of State. Secretary of State has spent this abbreviated weekend with the president at Camp David. They were trying right up until the noon deadline to avert the ground war. There'll be some historians who will say the president wanted the ground war. I certainly have no confirmation of that. Vice President Dan Quayle and John Sununu, the White House Chief of Staff. Dan Quayle has been on all the key meetings, and if you noticed when the president came out Friday morning on at the Rose Garden, Dan Quayle was the only official standing behind him. That wasn't by accident. Dan Quayle is the second-ranking figure in the United States government. There was some symbolism there. It wasn't Secretary of State Jim Baker, the president's good friend. It wasn't Brent Scowcroft, the National Security Advisor. It was Dan Quayle.
But John Cochran, as we watched him disappear into the Oval Office there in the West Wing of the White House, and you're hearing still another takeoff behind me because the resupply mission here just goes on without end. Commercial and American military aircraft bringing in everything that these troops will need, and that, of course, will be a crucial part of the war. All right, John Cochran, it's worth pointing out as well that this veteran of World War II, who was one of the youngest Navy flyers, George Herbert Walker Bush, has been in office just a little more than 2 years now, and we have had two significant American military combat actions, one in Panama, now one on a very large scale, underway tonight in Saudi Arabia and going north into Kuwait and then very possibly into Iraq as well. The dawn is coming up in the Persian Gulf. It's now 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the White House, the President of the United States is about to report to the American people from the press briefing room. Let's go to the press briefing room.
Good evening. Yesterday, after conferring with my senior national security advisors and following extensive consultations with our coalition partners, Saddam Hussein was given one last chance, set forth in very explicit terms to do what he should have done more than 6 months ago: withdraw from Kuwait without condition or further delay and comply fully with the resolutions passed by the United Nations Security Council. Regrettably, the noon deadline passed without the agreement of the government of Iraq to meet demands of United Nations Security Council Resolution 660, as set forth in the specific terms spelled out by the coalition to withdraw unconditionally from Kuwait. To the contrary, what we have seen is a redoubling of Saddam Hussein's efforts to destroy completely Kuwait and its people. I have therefore directed General Norman Schwarzkopf, in conjunction with coalition forces, to use all forces available, including ground forces, to eject the Iraqi army from Kuwait. Once again, this was a decision made only after extensive consultations within our coalition partnership. The liberation of Kuwait has now entered a final phase. I have complete confidence in the ability of the coalition forces swiftly and decisively to accomplish their mission. Tonight, as this coalition of countries seeks to do that which is right and just, I ask only that all of you stop what you were doing and say a prayer for all the coalition forces, and especially for our men and women in uniform, who this very moment are risking their lives for their country and for all of us. May God bless and protect each and every one of them, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Are the Soviets on board, sir? Soviets on board?
President Bush with a very short statement, a restatement really of the diplomatic efforts that have been made thus far in an effort to get Saddam Hussein to pull out of Kuwait. The president then saying, since that was not successful, that he authorized General Norman Schwarzkopf, who is the American commander of the Allied force here, to use all forces available to him to force the Iraqi army out of Kuwait. The liberation of Kuwait, as the president put it, is now in its final phase. Then he ended with an appeal to the country to stop whatever you're doing and to say a prayer on behalf of all of the forces, but especially the American troops who are risking their lives for their country and for the liberation of Kuwait. Tonight, Central Command will not speculate on when the war may be over. As one general said, we will continue to attack, attack, attack. Bill Redeker, ABC News, Saudi Arabia.
Saddam Hussein tried to end the war earlier today. He was on the radio overnight saying that the withdrawal of all his troops from Kuwait would be completed by tonight. He was wrong. President Bush responded by saying Saddam is not interested in peace, but only to regroup and fight another day. At the White House, ABC's Britt Hume.
4 days ago, the president prepared a statement in the Oval Office, much as he did today. In it, he offered to hold off a ground assault if Saddam would accept all UN resolutions and withdraw from Kuwait in a week. But that was then, and this is now, and Saddam's order to his forces to retreat did him no good today.
Saddam's most recent speech is an outrage. He is not withdrawing. His defeated forces are retreating. He is trying to claim victory in the midst of a rout, and he is not voluntarily giving up Kuwait. The coalition will therefore continue to prosecute the war with undiminished intensity.
The president got a briefing on the progress of the war today from Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Powell, who told him elite Republican Guard units in southern Iraq have been trapped, cut off, and cannot escape with their armor. Powell also said armed Iraqi units attempting to leave Kuwait are under withering Allied attack. The president reacted to that briefing in a speech at nearby Fort Myer later.
We are not only on schedule, we're ahead of schedule. And no commander-in-chief has ever been so proud of America's men and women in uniform.
In the faces of the president's men today, you could see that, as one White House official put it, they were beginning to believe the news from the front. That was during a ceremony for visiting Colombian President Gaviria. Afterward, the focus returned to the Gulf and the task of dealing with a post-war Iraq the administration regretfully assumes will still be under the control of Saddam Hussein. Britt Hume, ABC News, the White House.
There's a lot more. We'll continue in just a moment.
This is World News with Peter Jennings.